Hi, I'm Lisa Williams. I don't look like a drug dealer. My preppy boyfriend didn't look like a drug dealer, so it had to be the car. And it really was quite a car. It was an old Mercedes 190 convertible, the kind of car that the really cool European guys drive in 60s movies. But it didn't look its best that day. It was as though, imagine you saw Jackie Kennedy walking down the sidewalk, only she's dressed like a homeless person and pushing a shopping cart with all her stuff in it. I think that's how the Highway Patrol saw us. Tom and I had taken some time out from college to work in a resort in Arizona for the winter. When it was over, we had a problem. We had driven west in caravan with a friend of ours who was moving to LA, and everything that didn't fit into the 190, we just threw in the back of his giant Volvo. But here we were with more stuff and no Volvo. We had to find a way to pack 6 months worth of living into a two-seater with a trunk the size of a mailbox. Tom's solution was to build a custom carrier that fit on the back of the convertible and sat on top of the trunk. It was basically a giant plywood box, a very inelegant solution, but it worked great, and we set out. Our second day on the road began very early in the morning in Gallup, New Mexico. I, of course, fell asleep immediately in the passenger seat. I was awakened by sirens and flashing lights and a highway patrolman pounding on the window. Please exit your vehicle. We need your license and registration. Tom and I were frozen. We didn't know anything about cops. We were too young to have faced off as 60s protesters. But we did as we were told. And as one of the highway patrolmen looked at the paperwork, the other one told us to start getting our stuff out of the car. So I emptied out the passenger compartment, which was easy, while Tom dealt with the padlock on the carrier that we had. And then we started unpacking. And we opened every suitcase, we emptied every box. We had our clothes and our swimwear and our sheets and our towels. Everything had to be unfolded and shaken out and thrown on the side of the road. And we had our hiking boots and our riding boots and our earth shoes and our tap shoes all on the side of the road. We had my grandmother's Afghan and our camera and our rolls of film. When the carrier box was empty, the highway patrolman told us to open the trunk. And Tom explained that we couldn't do that. We hadn't expected to have to open it until we got home, so we didn't have the tools to move the carrier box to get to the trunk. The highway patrolman looked at us and at each other like, yeah, right. And they radioed, we need backup with a toolbox. So we stood there. We stood there in the blazing desert sun. And while we'd been there, traffic had picked up, so there's semis and there's pickups and there's station wagons flying past. And every one of them has humans in it, and they're all looking at us as they go by. Finally, the backup arrived, and Tom and I, with no assistance from the now 4 highway patrolmen who were watching, we dismantled the mounts that held the carrier onto the back of the car. And we opened the trunk, and we unloaded. We had some boxes of books, we had some binders with sheet music, we had folders of some stories I'd been writing, and okay, we had a couple of cases of Coors. Well, even though the car was now completely empty, the highway patrol was not ready to admit defeat. They took their flashlights and they went nose to tail on this car. They went under the floor mats, they went in the wheel wells, in the engine compartment, everywhere. Finally, they seemed to admit defeat. Sorry for the inconvenience. And they got in their cars and drove away. And we looked at each other, and we looked at this mountain of stuff around us in the sand, and armed only with a Swiss Army knife, we started putting everything back together again. We finally got back on the road probably about 6 hours after the initial stop. And I don't know what the moral of this story is. We got home, everything was fine, nothing changed because of that day, but it still seems important. It seems It seems important that I remember, that people like me remember, that terrible vulnerability and that sense of powerlessness that we felt there on the side of the road with the highway patrolman looking at us and all of our stuff laid out there on the side of the road for no reason at all. Thank you.